ready?
Yep.
Okay. Welcome TV viewers.
Welcome, Michael and Mike.
And Michael and Michael. Michael and Michael show. Over to the left of me, your right, maybe, I don't know. Okay, we have a quick agenda tonight, hopefully. A couple things to go over, which we'll start with Fran. Get us through this.
Easy, I'm giving everyone today an updated list of the donations for the senior picnic, with showing everyone who has volunteered to cover most of these places, and thank you so much, because it looks like we're pretty much covered. What I do need, I got a report from Ann today of what's downstairs, so we know what we need to purchase in terms of paper goods and garbage bags and so on, and the plastic containers and so on and so forth. So once everyone has finished finding out what is going to be donated, we'll make a list for Sam's Club. The invitations went out today, 60 of them went out by email, about 10 were put in the post, and the other 30 were put in various bins for employees throughout. I dropped off about 20-25 of them at the Friendship Center on Friday, and that's it. We're just waiting. If you could, as soon as you find out what anybody is donating, if you could just let me know, I'll try to keep this list updated. But yeah, we had an overabundance of burgers and Frank's last year. When we do purchasing, we need more cheesecakes. We need to buy cookies, because last year we had cookies from Cappuccino and they're not around anymore. Other than that, we're good to go. So it seems like tents are already rented, ordered, and Bruce has been notified, so Bruce will make sure that it's the grass is cut and the bathrooms are clean. That's all I have.
Okay.
Well, Saturday I put up some things at Chestnut Ridge, and of course they got drenched, so I'm gonna put up some more.
They got what?
They got drenched yesterday.
Oh.
Or not yesterday. The day that it rained, I guess it was, might have been yesterday.
I did mail one to the person who came into the office and said he was the vice president of the Phillipstown Seniors, so I mailed him an invitation to.
Oh, good.
And he said he would get the word out. They basically knew the date, they just didn't know the time.
Right.
Okay, moving along. The Garden Street repaving project, we had the bid last week. They came in, was it last week? Yeah.
Yes.
And only one person out of 5 or 6 bid the project, actually. The winning bid was, or the lowest bid and only bid was Van Eaton Contracting. I think they're from New Windsor or Cornwall, in the amount of $152,453.05. And the base, and then there was an additional add-on bid for the firehouse milling and paving for the parking and driveway area of $10,267. These numbers were higher than what was projected by our engineer. So I went back and I was talking to Jason about that and and what our options were. One is to go out to bid, and one is to go with this bid. He did go over all of there's line items for everything. So the 152 isn't actually a number it's what they give as their base price for everything. So if it's sidewalks and it's, there's 200 feet in the bid and there's only 100 feet, then they subtract by the unit price, stuff like that. So he didn't think it will come that high. He did go back and talk to Van Eaton, and Van Eaton actually, I think, contacted them and said they could come lower by making a few adjustments. The changes would amount to $17,000. Basically what they're asking for is to close the street for 4 days, so that they could do everything and do all their work in the 4 days and not have to, I guess, probably mobilize and unmobilize every day, moving everything over to the highway department. And the other was the trenches for some of the curbing. They, instead of coming out, I forget, it was 2 feet or 3 feet, they wanted to come in closer, so there'd be less cutting into the earth there and less work there. So they said that would be a savings of $17,000, which would bring their project cost down to $135,453. Jason also believes it can go lower than that. everyone has this, right? Okay.
Mhm.
Due to the limited scope of the project, it is not likely that these will be used. This could represent a cost reduction of $14,000. This is a number of other items. So he feels it's gonna come down to $120,000. There's also a $10,000 cushion in there by all the bidders, or, well, they were the only ones. So I guess the question is, if we go out to rebid, it's gonna take us about 3 weeks, according to Jason. Right now, we probably have a price of $135,453.
And that does not include the firehouse.
That doesn't include the firehouse. The firehouse would be $10,267.
No.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we don't have to do that, or we can do that. So,
How do we close that street for 4 days?
I agree.
How are we gonna be able to do that?
I think we could do that with working with them with the municipal parking lot. And also maybe talk to the church if it was at the beginning of the week, or,
Is there anybody on that street who needs accessibility to their home?
by vehicle.
By wheelchair, by vehicle, by walker, by something that they need to
Yes.
get their car right
Yes.
into their house?
There are people in the street that have that.
I mean, can they, when they did, was it furnace? What did they do? They closed half of it at a time?
No, they closed the entire road. Remember they dug up the entire.
Yeah, they got the whole road bed.
The whole road, they had to drop it down. No, the whole road was closed for a period, at least 4 days, maybe more. I can't remember
Yeah,
now.
they did the sidewalks there, they did everything.
Yeah, they took everything out.
But at the end of the workday, you can still drive on it though, right? Remember you could.
Yes, they did allow that. They had to put in some big plates to do that, particularly where they were doing the excavation to tie into the Main Street drainage. But they were able to put some, I don't know what you call them, those heavy plates
Yeah,
down.
please.
But if you look at the length of Furnace Street versus the length of Garden Street, it's a bit different.
Yeah.
What we could do is talk to the people on Garden Street
Let's see.
and see what we could do to accommodate them
Okay,
if they have special needs.
all right.
Well, if they could get out in the morning and in after work, wouldn't be so bad, but if it's really closed completely for 4 days.
You know, maybe it means that they
That's
have their
tough.
machine left on one end of the,
Like parked like a car.
yeah, parked at one end and blocking one end, so you could at least have access from one side or the other.
Well, maybe you could ask Jason what, the 4 days, what
Right.
it would actually represent.
Mhm.
Is it totally closing the street, or can, as Steve said, vehicles can get onto and off of the street prior to 8 o'clock in the morning and after 5 o'clock at night? That would make it, I think, more tolerable for
Yeah.
some people. There are others, however, who have needs that require them to leave in the middle of the day. I'm thinking, I know one person.
Okay. So if looking at this price though, becomes a 135, is everyone fine with awarding this once we talk and can work something out with Garden Street?
Yes, I am,
Yeah,
yes.
that's a lot better, yeah.
Maybe you want a roll call vote on that, or you want to make a motion?
Well, I think we should, we'll vote on it next week.
That
And
sounds
we'll
good.
talk to Garden Streeters this week.
Yes.
I'll try to do it door to door.
Yeah, I can't help tomorrow.
I can probably do that. It's gonna be hard, we have to come up with a kind of a date, kind of a time. It would probably be October, I'd imagine.
Yeah, and the problem will be when the mechanic place is shut down.
I think they shut down in November,
Early
December.
November, I
right?
think you're right, early November. I will get at least one house on the garden tomorrow.
All right, good. All right, so we'll table awarding till next week. And then I'll talk to Jason and see if I can get more information on what the shutdown would actually entail and if we'll have some access or not.
and if there's any accommodations that can be made for people with special needs.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Next, have a letter from Stephen Bogardus and his wife, I guess, Catherine Bogardus. Yes, it is his wife, who live on Parrott Street, with a complaint regarding Airbnbs. And their neighbor, who is running one and who he has sent either screenshots or photos, I guess it would be probably screenshots or whatever he printed out from Airbnb, showing that the property is indeed being rented out.
Those people live there though.
What's that?
They live there.
No, I think they moved.
No, they live there because I was just pricing a job in their basement 2 weeks ago.
They bought another house though,
Did they?
in the village.
No, these people are, Bernard and Tracy. I'm gonna remodel their basement maybe. I just
It
priced
really
it.
doesn't matter whether or not they live there.
Okay, but I'm just saying that they do live there.
Okay.
When I was just there.
Oh, all
With
right,
their
I heard
kids.
they had sold and were moving.
Well, as I saw their name, I'm like, I know these.
Okay.
Anyway,
So, to this first point, I'm not gonna read the entire letter, although he asked me to, so I'll read it quickly. Totally negative, I'll try to block it out. My wife Catherine and I have lived here for, since 1994. We bought our house on 46 Parrott. We bought our house on Parrott Street to be on a street that was in a single-family zoning, away from commercial zoning. It has come to our attention that our next-door neighbor at 44 Parrott are running a hotel, advertising their house on the internet and asking $295 per night to stay. Please see attached. I could write to you about maintaining the wonderful character of our residential streets, especially historic Parrott Street, or I could tell you that I didn't buy my house in Parrott Street to be living next to a hotel. But the issue is clearly simpler than that. This is a clear violation of our zoning laws. This is black and white. It's a commercial venture and does not belong in a single-family residential zoned area. If I were to run an auto repair shop out of my two-car garage at 46 Parrott Street and advertised on the internet for my friends to come over to repair their cars and charge them for their service by any standard, that would be considered a commercial venture and would not be allowed in our single-family zoning on Parrott Street. Advertising your house on the internet for nightly stays as a hotel is the same and therefore a clear violation of our zoning law and should be stopped immediately. We could talk about the homeowner not paying commercial taxes or the added strain on our infrastructure and services, but if we don't stop commercial ventures from encroaching on our single-family owner occupied zoning, you'll ultimately forever change the character of our quiet residential streets like Parrott Street. You yourself, Mayor Morandi, told me on the phone when I called you over the holiday weekend, interrupting your day, that you had, no, he didn't put that, that you had to call the police twice in the last year on transient renters next to you. Why hasn't this issue been dealt with, and why are our zoning laws not being enforced? The city of Beacon has banned the practice of short-term rental, and it's time for the village of Cold Spring to do so. So, to Mr. Bogardus's point, it isn't a violation, and looking over the code, it's fairly clear in there, although there is one little murky area that, residential area R1, they are allowed by permit, it says in one section, but it also says, see the supplement in another section, which in that section says the only ones that are permitted in the R1 district are ones that are on a state road. So, since this isn't on a state road, they are not permitted, and there is no special permit granted either, the way I'm reading it, and I had Marie check it, and she sent me, and that's the way we read our code presently. So what I've done is this person's totally within his rights to make this complaint. I forwarded this to the code enforcement and asked him to put a notice to stop and to remedy, and Greg said that he would follow through on that. This is one of the very few complaints that we've had, although I'm sure there are other people mumbling, but haven't really actually sent us any notes or any letters, so, his request was to have this stopped. It is a violation, so we forwarded it. There are Airbnbs around that we know of, or that have happened. I think that our code, because, I don't know, they just, we haven't had any enforcement on it. And so, not that that's an excuse, I guess, but that is the excuse. So, you know, I think what we have to do is to be working on that. And what I did without thinking about Marie's actually working on this with the code update committee is that I thought we'd have this meeting tonight to start discussion on this, but obviously it's been started already. There are a number of communities, we're not the only one, I think every community is involved and, you know, is debating this. I think Boston just passed new laws regarding this. Big cities, small cities, everyone's dealing with it, so we're not alone. Beacon, as he said, I guess, I don't know if it's a moratorium or they just outright stopped it. Anyway, I guess the question is, you know, Marie, you can give us what the code, Marie, I think, put in our packets, what the new the code update committee is recommending. So Marie, you can.
Yes, in the, I think it was in 2004 or 2005, you may remember there was a survey that went out to all residents in the village of Cold Spring, asked them what they liked about the village and what they didn't like about the village, what changes they would recommend. And one of the changes that was recommended by a number of people was the opportunity or the availability of short-term rentals, specifically for family members who could rent at reasonable prices to stay overnight in the area because of the lack of reasonably priced hotels in the area. And as a result of that, the Code Update Committee looked at the village zoning code to see what changes, if any, should be made to accommodate what we are calling overnight accommodations. We stay away from the term Airbnb, we're staying away from the term bed and breakfast, although we do define bed and breakfast and tourist accommodation, and overnight accommodations. We're deleting the phrase tourist homes. What we're recommending is that regardless of whether you call it an overnight accommodation or bed and breakfast, that the dwelling has to be occupied by the owner when paid guests are present. The majority of complaints that we've heard from people who are adjacent to such accommodations is that the people who rent can be very noisy and disruptive. And the people who live adjacent to these dwellings have either had to call the police or they've had to try to reach the owner to get the owner to go to the home and tell their guests that this is a residential neighborhood. And we really don't want people partying outside at 11 o'clock at night with bonfires and whatnot. So the first is that what the Code Update Committee is recommending is that a dwelling must be occupied by the owner when paid guests are present. Second, the maximum number of guest rooms permitted is 3. More than 3 guest rooms is considered by law to be a hotel. So if you've got more than 3 guest rooms, you're not an overnight accommodation, you are a hotel, and are bound by the New York State laws for hotels.
So if you have, is that 3 bedrooms? Like if you have 3 rooms, does that mean a house that has 3 bedrooms and has an office and 2 bathrooms, that's considered 3?
The way we are interpreting it is the number of sleeping rooms.
Okay.
If it's more than 3 sleeping rooms, you're a hotel.
I mean, that are rented separately, or
Rented.
just rent, like,
Rented.
say, well, a family's there with 3 people in it, and they have 3,
3 people sleeping in 3 different rooms, you've got 3 guest rooms there.
but you don't mean like people are not related to each other, each renting a separate room? Well, that would be more like a hotel. Do you know what I'm saying?
We don't get into relationships.
Okay.
But if you have 3 sleeping rooms.
You're talking
that-
about the facilities then,
Right,
not the use of them.
Facilities, right.
Okay.
And if you have a study that is convertible to a guest room, that's another one. If you have sleeper sofas in the living room, that's another one. It's the number of sleeping rooms. We also define overnight accommodations as having no separate cooking facilities for guests. So it would be a maximum of 3 sleeping rooms and no cooking facilities.
What if they do have cooking facilities? What would that fall under?
So if you're renting out a whole house which has cooking facilities, that would be a violation because you have to have the owner staying in the house. Right? Now, if the owner chooses to make their kitchen available to the guests, I would say that's the arrangement that the owner has made with the guests. We wouldn't get involved in that.
What if is there the possibility for there to be an apartment like a mother-daughter where they're renting the apartment and there's kitchens in both? So that the owner could be in a downstairs apartment and rent the upstairs and there's a kitchen?
No, the owner has to be in residence in that unit. So if you've got an upstairs, two
I hear
apartments.
you, I got what you're saying, yeah.
Nope, we want the owner, we feel that the owner needs to be there to maintain the appropriate
So the owner is gonna be in one of the rooms,
downstairs or upstairs, right, but not co-resident with the renters, with the overnight people.
she's not, so a person's not co-residence, then why can't they be in a mother-daughter or in a downstairs apartment? I don't know.
Right, the logic that we used is that the person needs to be there with the renters.
Yeah, but,
Not in a separate apartment upstairs
but I
or
thought you
adjacent.
just said they weren't cohabitating or not cohabitating,
Not say that.
that they weren't living in
Co-present.
the same area as the renters.
What we were saying is that the dwelling, the unit has to be owner occupied at the time that the rooms are being rented,
But where does the owner stay?
wherever the guests are staying.
So they're part of the guests. They're in a room that's in.
They're sharing the home with
They're
the
sharing
guests.
the home.
Yes, and that was
One
the
of those
original
3 rooms.
concept of a bed and breakfast.
Of a bed and breakfast,
Yes.
yeah, not the concept for Airbnb.
We're not,
Or
right.
for,
I think.
regardless, whatever,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, I live between 2 of these mother-daughter things.
What's that?
I live between 2, I have one on either side of me.
Mother-daughter,
Mother-daughter arrangements that, well, one is not being used as an Airbnb, the other one is.
So is there a limit, so say you have a mother-daughter place, I mean, you can rent it for 6 months, a year, whatever, you can actually
That's
rent it.
correct.
It's a 2-family house.
You're correct.
Okay.
That we're talking about
We're
short-term
talking about
rentals, which is
short-term.
30 days or less.
30 days, okay, that's what it's 30 days.
So in addition to that, we are requiring that there be an annually renewed overnight accommodations permit. A fire inspection is required. Proof of insurance coverage for overnight accommodations is required.
I believe when I looked at this, there's a limit on how many of these permits, was this?
That was
Was it the
actually
area?
in the accessory, in the accessory apartment. So this is in the R1 district. We are not permitting overnight accommodations in the B4 district, which is Chestnut Ridge, or in the B4A district, which is the Butterfield complex. And one of the things I realized when I went through this is we are silent on R3 and B1. So I've got, the code update committee has to go back on that. So R3 would be Forge Gate Springbrook, and R1 is Main Street and below the tracks. I'm sorry, R3 and B1, right? In addition, each guest room that is being rented out for overnight accommodation must have one off-street parking space. for each guest room. So if you're renting out 3 guest rooms, there need to be 3 off-street parking spaces. And that is, the reason for the need for off-street parking is so that the neighborhood is not congested with additional on-street parking. So that's what the CUC is proposing for overnight accommodations.
Do we have any idea when this goes before a public hearing or?
There will be a public meeting on this later this month, and it will be the entire volume of the work done by the Code Enforcement Committee. My expectation is that it will be approximately 500 pages of documentation, and the goal is to have everything online within 2 weeks, at least 2 weeks prior to the meeting. And online you will have both a markup version and an accepted markup version. So you'll be able to see exactly where the changes are, and you'll be able to read exactly what it will look like once it's accepted. And I'm talking about Word, accepting in Word.
So as far as the board, this one topic and how long it's gonna take to do this or whatever, and and the board's thoughts on changes or whatever, are we waiting for that meeting, or can we send you stuff before the meeting?
The whole objective of having the village board review all of the
So
changes.
we all, it's separate? I took on 2, but Fran was the only one looking at zoning, so that leaves,
But you looked at zoning too.
I did look at zoning,
I think,
I didn't.
I mean, I think at this point, it would be crazy to start sending them changes. I think we need to wait it out.
I certainly, I have absolutely no problem sending you more documents, none
Okay.
whatsoever.
So when we go though to the public hearing and I say, this is ridiculous, I can't accept this, then.
And we say, so Dave,
Yeah.
you're a private citizen. The
Right.
fact that you can't accept it
Then it's
is
gonna go.
knocks nips.
But then it's going to go to the board, and then the board can
Then
vote
put out a
against or
different ad.
for it or not.
What'll happen after the public meeting
Mhm.
is, I don't expect that we're going to get much input at all in the public meeting. I don't know how many people are going to read the 500 pages beforehand. We will accept input for another month. So at the end of October, we will close the public hearing, public meeting with all of the input that has been received. The next step is to have all of this documentation go to our attorney for review. And then after that, the village board will hold a public hearing,
Mhm.
and then after the public hearing, the village board has the opportunity to make any changes it wishes to the documents, and then the village board will vote on the documentation, which is the code.
Okay, so say in this case, this goes all the way to the very end, goes to the public hearing, and then it comes to the board after review, and the board members don't agree with this, the majority of them, then how would we change it at that point? We would say we would like to do this, or how would the changes take place, or who would?
I would expect that the board would be very specific about what they don't like.
Okay.
They don't like, the demolition rules. They don't like, exterior lighting rules. They don't like, trying to think of some other major things.
Well, in this case, what if I didn't like the fact that you're saying that the owner has to be living with the
Yes,
tenant?
and you are one of 5 people
Mhm.
who can make that, who can vote that way.
Right,
You need a majority
okay.
of the board to say yes or no. And I would be looking for what it is specifically that you think is a problem with this.
Okay.
Keeping in mind that what we've gotten is a lot of feedback from people who live adjacent to sites where there are B&B overnight accommodations currently in progress,
Mhm.
and they are loud and they are noisy and they park in others' driveways and,
I have to say, I have two places around, surrounding me, and 99% of the time, I have no problem at all, and you don't even know the people are there. The problem seems to come when there's like more, it's like, there's one that has three bed, and this is the same that with the one house on Mountain Avenue. The houses, this seems like the buildings that are renting out that have more than 3 bedrooms are advertising you can fit 12 people or 10 people or whatever. And then young groups come up, like, you know, couples, like 6 or like 3 or 4 couples. Then they're hanging out and whatever, and it becomes noisy or a frat hash like, you know, like, but every other, and they rent, there's a lot of renting going on and a lot of people there. And I've had absolutely no problem except for a few occasions out of that I think could be addressed and mitigated by stronger rules.
I heard today in the discussion around the office that residents in R1 districts are comfortable knowing who their neighbors are. And when their neighbor isn't the neighbor the person living in the house next to them is not the neighbor that they expect to be there, but a stranger who's coming and going, especially as you become seniors, that's not comfortable. They're in an area where they wanna know who, you know, not necessarily because it's loud. I've also heard, over the past couple of weeks, of an incident where people assume that the adjacent property belongs to where they're renting, and so they sit there and they use the table and they have their lunch and they walk their dogs and everything else. You know, there's all that kind of stuff. It doesn't necessarily have to be loud. I think people in an R1 district expect it to be a residential, and they expect to sort of know who the neighbors are when they open the door.
Well, certainly, and also the character of Parrott Street too, is that as long as we've been living there, everybody with young kids can just kind of open their doors and say to their kids, go out and play, and they go out and play with their kids, with their friends. If there are a bunch of strangers coming and going, I don't know, I mean, seniors want to be safe, parents want their kids to be safe too.
Is there ever a situation where, like, if we got to the point, with something like the request of whether or not we can have Airbnbs in the village go to a referendum, go to a vote?
I don't know the answer to that. It would be a John first question.
I think you could put anything, you could put something up for a vote, I'm sure.
It would have to be at least next year, at least
But, I mean, you
2020.
can't put up Airbnb.
No, I mean, it would have to be much more
It
specific.
would have to be very specific.
But I mean, you know, that would be the only way in my mind that we could really pool the residents as much as we can and see where they stand.
I mean, I guess I'm biased because it may be selfish, because I go to other places and I rent Airbnbs, and I don't wanna go to Fishkill into a hotel room. My daughter comes back from California with her kids, with her son and their family, and they don't wanna stay at a hotel room in Fishkill either, you know? And so living in a village or living someplace, you know, that's more intimate, there's people who come up on the trains that, you know, aren't gonna go to Fishkill or wherever. And when I go, or, you know, I went up to Canada and stayed in one and the owner's not there, and I'm not going to a place where the owner's living right there with me, probably not. It's nice to be in a small village or a small town where you can rent something that's has the character of the village, and you're not in a, you know, industrial area like Fishkill. So, you know, from my point, it's like, you know, I understand the others, and, you know, and I'm just one voice, so whatever people want. I mean, the way it sounds just from what Lynn has said and you've said, and the way this rule is written, I think you might as well just eliminate them,
Yeah.
because.
It doesn't sound workable. I mean, having someone that has to be in the actual apartment with these people is totally the opposite of the reason why you go away and rent a room in the first place. It's like staying at your parents' house or something. Like, there's, people have to actually be supervised by the owner of the property, and they have to sleep under the exact same roof and all that. It doesn't seem workable for the whole.
When you, well,
whole
going
concept.
back to a street which shall not be named, when you've got 6 couples coming into a house for a party for the weekend.
That's a
No.
different story, and that's not owner
But that is
occupied,
not-
they're out of
but-
there.
But that is
you know?
not a different story. It is what happens not infrequently with some of the larger houses in the village. There are a number of houses that have 4 bedrooms. You could have 4 couples with the objective
Right.
of having a party all
I understand that,
weekend.
but if
But
there's.
can't that be mitigated by enforcing and having rules where you can only have 4 people per house is the
Or-
maximum regardless of how
or
many
if you're
bedrooms. Or
there-
if you're a family, you can have a parents and 3 children.
I'm sorry, how would, I'm not sure how you would implement that.
You would, by saying you can have X amount of people per house, if it's a house, if it's an
Okay.
apartment, you can have the same way you're gonna have to implement it, like how many rooms are in a house, and how do you know so many people are in each room?
We don't care how many people are in each room. There's nothing here that says how many people are in each room.
Just a number.
What it says is how many rooms can you rent out, and the maximum you can rent out.
So then how is that gonna eliminate this disturbance, because you have someone,
Because you have the owner there.
and how do you know the owner's gonna be there?
But why does the owner have to be under the same roof? Why can't the owner be
10 minutes away?
What?
or
what-
next
when
door,
they-
or in an apartment in the basement,
Oh,
or
or-
something like that, like on premises, but why,
Um,
you have to sleep in the room right next door to the people that are in your house?
Sorry,
It's gonna make people not wanna have an Airbnb.
and that's fine, and that is absolutely fine. We
But
don't
then that's the
want
way
to
we
become-
should write it then. Why
Yeah.
are we beating around the bush here and saying you can only have a green car and, and 2 rooms that are blue and one with yellow shutters, and
I
you
don't
can
think-
only have a
We've not
truck
gotten into
that.
color, we've not gotten into
I mean,
color,
at
Dave.
this point, basically, Code Update Committee has put tons of time into coming up with, so I think we just need to let it flow. Let's open it to the public meeting, see what the public says, open it to the public hearing. We can all voice then and then take it from there. This isn't set in stone yet, it may not be set in stone.
Well, it's set in stone.
No, it isn't.
No, it's not.
It's
It isn't.
fairly.
No, it isn't.
No, it's not.
Then why
It's
can't we
not.
do it? Okay.
Because
We'll go
they-
to the end.
Because they've worked on the whole 500 pages of the code, and they've done proposals and
I
everything.
know, and that's a lot of work, I'm not
Yeah.
saying that it
Well,
isn't.
so at this
There's a
point-
lot, okay, here's an Adirondack one from Lake Placid. Same
Lovely
problem.
town, by the way.
Same problem, huge thing. Some of the ways they've gotten around it is, there's fines, there's the number of people that can be in certain areas, there's parking, there's the owner has to be within 30 minutes, there's other ways around some of
I mean,
what
we
we're
can
doing.
change that.
So I can tell you about a family who left their junior in high school daughter at home for the weekend. And their next door neighbors decamped, as they do every weekend, and rented out their house in total to at least 4 couples who had in fact a fire going on in the backyard, who were in fact parking in the owner's driveway, and who were very loud at 11 o'clock at night. So the daughter called the parents, who were away for the weekend, and the parents tried for an hour to get in touch with the owners. It was after 11 o'clock at night. They had turned off their cell phones. So being within a half an hour does not necessarily mean that you will be responsive
There's
to a
something
call.
called police. And
what-
if you have regulations and you have codes and laws, the police, if they're made to enforce them, then can be called, and if people know that, then they can, I called the police. The people were having a film shoot outside at 10:30 at night, a still shot, in the corner of my house during a weekday.
Okay.
They're very quiet, but it was bothersome. I called the police, they came up and they left.
So-
But
so-
that seems like I'm saying is, I understand that and I don't wanna have that, I just think that the problem seems to be when there's an excess number of couples and not like a family or not like a couple that are just up for the weekend. That there's a one small place across the street, they just, there's a couple, it's all that can fit is a couple. There's no problems, there's no problem with parking because there is no parking. People come up, either get dropped by Uber or they come up on the train and you don't know they're there. The people next door, I have never had a problem unless it's on 6 or more people because there's 3 bedrooms. So why can't we just eliminate that? Why can't you say you can only have so many people? Because that's where, I guarantee you, if you go to all the complaints, they are made by a place that has more than 3 bedrooms, or that allows more than 4 people.
So one of the problems that we have in the village, that my observation, is a homeowner is unwilling to call the police on their next door neighbor. And so they suffer through the annoyance and the disturbance, trying to get in touch with the neighbor, to have the neighbor handle the situation, as opposed to calling the police, because in the village, that's what people do. They tend not to call the police, other than some people who call the police multiple times.
Yeah, well,
What we wanted to do was have a code which was enforceable based upon the structure, not upon the number of people to whom the owner is renting.
but isn't the problem what we're trying to solve, and isn't the problem the number of people?
We could probably go through and ask a variety of people, when has the tourist home next to you been a problem, and how many people were there, and what was the problem? All I can do is provide you with anecdotal evidence that was presented to the Code Update Committee as far as what people were saying. So I think we can all agree that there are far more overnight accommodations in the village than we would expect there to be. The village is fast becoming the B&B of Putnam County.
Mhm.
And one of the things that Fran said, and one of the stories that was related to us way back when, was a gentleman who lives on one of the streets in the village, and he said, much as you said, Fran, one of the reasons I like my street is because I know all my neighbors. When I see somebody walking on my street whom I don't know, it is a concern to me. I don't know whether it should be, but it is a concern to me. I want to have a neighborhood where I know everybody. That's what living in the village is all about. And that's not what we've become on many of the streets. And I suppose the only solution to that is to attempt to eliminate overnight accommodations. But one of the comments that was received back in the survey was to provide low-cost, friendly accommodations within the village. The first part has gone by the wayside a long time ago.
Well, we should also look at the effect of the growth of overnight accommodations and how it's a financial boon to the property owners, but overall what it does is drive up the cost of living for everybody else. I mean,
I'm not sure I
what
see that
happens
there's a
is,
correlation.
if overnight accommodations in residential districts grows more than it is, if we truly are becoming the B&B of Putnam County, the villages, we're losing our village character. But also, if homeowners can get $200, $300 a night, whereas they can only get maybe $2,000 a month, then what it does is ultimately drive up rents across the entire village.
I think what it does is it makes fewer properties available for rental.
That too.
And that, I think, is a concern, that we've become a village that is as much a weekend home for people as it is a place to live. I look in my neighborhood, and there are 2, if not 3 residences which are weekend only. And the people maintain their homes very nicely, but I don't know them. It's not the village that I used to know.
I just think that, well, a few things. One, you can mitigate the number of houses that are in the village. So I agree, I don't want a village that's full of Airbnbs, and I think that that's what some of the other places have done. They limit the number that you actually can have in a village. We have a small village that you could definitely regulate that easily. Second, if you want to counter the financial impact on, there's all of these places, 2 things, and one that Marie said is very true. The people that have Airbnbs are more likely, and I would say than people that just stay there for their whole lives, of upkeeping their houses. they keep them in way better shape and much neater or whatever, because they want to attract people, so they can't just let them fall apart or, you know, just whatever, so they keep up the maintenance. The other thing is, if you want to talk financially, I'm not saying this is good or bad, but the people that are doing this in the Airbnbs are not families that are gonna rent, and then they're not gonna have children, and they're not gonna go to our schools, and so there's gonna be less impact on our schools. It's it's you know, a fact. I mean, if you have 6 places in like one little area, and they all had family there, and they all have kids, they're gonna go to our school, and that's gonna be an impact. So that's, you know, something we're eliminating by that. If we're gonna do, you know, if we're gonna go pro and cons on it, I think you should consider that also.
Another thing too,
Just
Go ahead.
one thing that someone who has related a number of Airbnb stories to us is on either side of that person are residences that are rented out, the house is rented out on weekends. Both of these houses have families with school-aged children. Both of those families decamp on the weekend to their second homes, wherever the second homes are. So the impact on this, interestingly, the impact on the school district is not mitigated at all by.
By your 2 examples.
By my 2 examples, that's right.
Well, that's not looking at the whole town. You
No,
can't come
I-
to that conclusion from that. I can't come to a conclusion in mine. I'm saying we should take that in consideration.
Well, what you're saying is if someone owns a house, they pay a certain number of taxes. If they rent the house out year-round to a family that has 8 kids, those people aren't paying taxes on those 8 kids. Only the owner of the property is paying the property tax. So
But the
That's
taxes
what
are.
I think you mean,
The
I
taxes
think.
are built into the rental rate that anybody pays. And, I mean, that's the law in New York State. You don't pay school taxes based upon the number of children that you send to the school district. You pay
On the property.
taxes on the
I'm
value.
just saying,
yeah, but there would still be more people using it.
The one house next to me has 3 bedrooms. They used to have a family there that had 3 or 4 children, and now that's not the case. Now this person, they rent it out. So there's 4 kids that aren't going to our schools. There's 4 kids, you know, they're not using these facilities year-round, every day, so less impact on our infrastructure, you could say.
Well,
Less water, why? Because if they're only there on weekends, that's 2 days versus a family that's there for 5.
I agree that if the facility is only rented out 2 weekend days a week, that probably uses less water and generates less sewer than a family living there 7 days a week.
I would hope so.
Unless they hold it
If
to
they
the
have
weekend.
constipated people or something, I don't know.
I would agree with that.
The other thing is, when we talk about how the neighborhoods are, is Airbnb really the reason why our neighborhoods aren't the way we remember them? I mean, the street I grew up on is not the same as it was, and never will be. It's a different era, it's a different time. People aren't as close, people aren't as neighborly, people aren't, I would say, that's just generalization. I don't know how many people go out and hang out with their neighbors or
I do.
whatever. Well, you're.
I do. I do. You know, and I have to say too, when we moved in here, we had
You
come
don't like
from
being
living
by hand.
7 years in Yonkers where we knew 2 people in our neighborhood. We moved here and within a week, we knew 30 people that lived around Parrott Street, Bank Street. I mean, and there was a real sense of a village character, and we love that. That's why we bought here. So I'm sensitive to what this person is saying. I'm also sensitive to how people who find extra room in their homes would like to, make a little money on it. But I think we can solve this by limiting the number, put a permitting process in place and limiting the number of permits.
And charge for them as well, and the village
Yes.
profits from that. It's finally a place where we can make some money.
And the buildings do need fire inspections, as they say, and insurance coverage, as they say. Yeah, and I think limiting it, whether we want 5% of the residences, or 2%, or, whatever we want.
So we'll let it come to the end. Like I said, I put it on the agenda, I wanted to start addressing it. I guess anyone that makes complaints or whatever now, or has problems, they should send send complaints to the building inspector and the building department, and they enforce the code, and they're not permitted, and they can shut them down, or attempt to shut them down. And we'll wait until, the code update finishes their work, and we'll comment on it then. And I do like the idea of getting more people's opinion or having it on a referendum. I think that's a great idea. I think it's, you get more of a sense, the people that usually, that come to the meetings that we have during most events are, a minority of the village, so I don't know if they speak on behalf of the whole village.
Well, keep in mind that the earliest a referendum can occur is next November.
Right, and so this should be done, and then if we have to at that point. But this will be long done by then,
Yep.
hopefully.
Do we
Yes.
have any sense of what percentage of the residences in the village are overnight accommodation?
No, that should be information we should have when making a decision too.
And then there's no way to
We
get
can
that.
say there.
Yes,
no-
there is a way to do that.
No
First
one-
of all, you can go on Airbnb and get
Yeah, but-
almost all of them. Then you can ask people just in the paper to, hey, send us a little note here in the village if you have an Airbnb next to you.
We can also say that no one has ever applied for a permit.
No one ever has
Yeah.
applied
For
for it.
a tourist home,
Right.
never.
Well, if you're running a business, don't you, when we started our business in Putnam County, we got a business license from Putnam County.
That's the
Don't
fun
these
of
people have to
Airbnbs,
have?
No,
Yeah.
no.
They don't,
That-
But they're running a business.
It is not considered a business. If you look at the code identifies a permitted use of a tourist home in R1 district.
I mean,
It's not considered.
what they do on their tax returns for income is not something
Totally.
we have access to.
I have no idea.
Well, the state would like to know about its missing sales taxes, I imagine, too.
Or income tax anyway, but
Okay.
that's way over us.
We will move on then. Thank you for all your input, it's always good. Request for relief on a late payment for a huge amount of $15 by a resident in Nelsonville who was on vacation, always pays a bill, and will never ever do it again, miss again. So I'll make a motion to waive the $15 fine for the late payment for this individual.
I'll second that.
Discussion, all in favor?
Right.
I think what we need to sort of publish again, and I missed it when this person came into the office, is that people can pay their bills online. And if you sign up online, you at least get an email notice that says your bill is coming, even if you don't pay it online. You do get a notice that says your bill is coming, so that you know that the water bills are out. Because I've done that, I don't pay online, I came with a check. But every quarter, the email comes in and says, hey, your water bill's due, this is how much. So-
It is also not a surprise that the village water bills go out 4 times a year. They go out on the 15th of the month, so what is it, January, April, August, and whatever.
Okay, next, approval of minutes, I'll make a motion to approve trustee workshop meeting 8/27/19.
I'll second.
I have to
I have comments.
Okay,
I have to admit that I looked at this late when I came in here tonight, and I had more comments than I think.
do you want to table this, and we can give to Michael any changes, and then,
Well, a question
Yeah.
on the question of American Legion of adjustment on assessed water rents. The water quantity rate, the water quantity rate is not 276.
No, that whole area I needed to adjust. And I will, first of all, the last part of that section where it says.
$60, it wasn't 60.
It was,
Wasn't it 200?
it was 200 plus what I thought was $60 for an overage, but Michelle corrected me the next day that we had raised the rates, so it should be 40. What we said at the meeting was $60 for the overcharge and 200 for the startup.
Right.
What it should have been was 200 for the startup and 40 for the overcharge. So the 60 is what was said at the meeting. 40 is a correction, but there are other areas of that paragraph that need to be adjusted. So if we could table this, and I will send them to Michael and to Jeff.
but some of them aren't actually, they're a representation of the meeting, but not actually the facts. but
Just
so
that
there
one,
were-
yeah, so the $60 is actually a representation of the
So
meeting.
Fran and Marie, when you write me your notes, include words that I can say, after the meeting, it was determined that
Okay,
the
Then I
actual
messed it
cost,
up.
the
I
actual whatever is whatever.
okay, I will get to this, I
Is there
promise.
anything else since Mike's here right now that you want to,
No.
besides that area?
Willie's, first page, Michael, Willie's is apostrophe S,
Hang on.
bottom of the first page.
First
Request
page.
to waive 30-day advance notice for liquor license renewal for Whistling
I'm sorry,
Willie's.
I can't hear you. Where,
Willie's is apostrophe S.
where are we on page?
Very
Request
bottom.
to waive 30-day advance notice.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Let me find it.
And there is a couple of other typo or grammar. I'll get them to you.
Also, it's Eliza Starbuck,
Yeah.
page 2.
Now, speaking of Whistling Willie's, that was tabled.
Yeah, and we didn't follow up on that either, so,
Did Jeff talk to him today?
I don't know if he
I don't
did.
know.
I'll follow up tomorrow.
We'll have to find out. We're gonna call the,
We
authorities.
have to find out from somebody what it is. What I think it is they are sent the application, and in the past, instead of sending us an application, the owners of the establishment send us a request to waive it. They don't send us the application. Ray from Whistling Willie's actually gave us the application
Oh.
that's sent to them. I think that's what's going
Oh,
on.
okay, so it's not the situation where they want to waive the 30-day waiting period.
It is.
It is.
Because they're,
Well, we always,
They sent
but
the
whenever
wrong
we've
form.
gotten it before, there was a request to waive the 30 days.
Okay, so we're back to the question of why don't they file on time? Why are we always being asked to waive? I think,
from what I understand, Jeff seems to think that his liquor license is expiring in the next couple of days, or it did expire a day or so ago, so, I don't know what kind of leeway they have. But we got this on the 26th. You know, so maybe he brought it 2 days before it was gonna expire.
so
We're
maybe
still
it
in
should
it.
expire.
Really?
Really?
I mean, I agree with you, because this constant, you know, you can't get it to us a month ahead of time, so we have a
Well, why
chance.
should it even
Right, why should
come
it be
to
our
us?
problem?
It should just be
We
filed
should-
to
we
the
should-
state.
Well, we're supposed to get a notice that says such and such a license is due to expire in 30 days. If you have no complaints, then we're fine.
Hmm,
That kind of thing. And we'll send a letter saying we have no complaints.
That I'm
But
fine with.
waiving the requirement for that,
And you did talk to Warner about
Yes,
waiver.
yep. And others.
I like the list.
Yeah. If people want, they gotta make complaints on that. Let's see, so I'll talk to Jeff on the, okay, anything else from the board? Public?
Yeah, Marie, did you give the date for the, public meeting about the changes to the code?
Theoretically, it'll be on the last Wednesday of the month. I haven't talked to the fire company yet to see if I can get that space. This is going to be very different from the other two public meetings that we had, where we provided everybody with hard copy of what the changes were. There's no way we're going to provide a 500-page document to everybody. So my expectation is it will be a very ho-hum meeting. And what people will mostly focus on is the rolled up, here are the changes that were made to chapter 1. Here are the changes that were made to chapter 2. We made it gender neutral. We corrected some grammar. Here are the changes made to chapter 5. We said that waiting period, we removed the fees from chapter 5 and put it in the master fee schedule. So that will be the, I think, the primary discussion point in the meeting.
Thank you. But that's this month, right?
This month, right? And then our goal would be to have this in front of the village board by the end of the year. We'll have to do a secret, and that will be a major secret, because we are talking about land use. One of the things we're talking about is the scenic view overshed, and that affects building height and building width. We identify what the scenic views are that we want to protect, such as St. Mary's, and other significant structures within the village.
Thank you. And Steve, do you run a B&B?
Yep.
So do you think this isn't a conflict for you to be a part of the discussion?
Be a part of the discussion? No, I don't think so.
You would have to recuse yourself.
Not from the discussion.
Not from the discussion, I should be allowed to talk about it.
Okay.
But from the village.
Probably, because I know how I'm gonna vote.
Thank you.
The thing you could do is not rent it out anymore until after the vote, Steve.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll do that.
I know, I shouldn't be telling you how to skirt. You can figure that out.
Yeah, I can do it on my own.
You're a big guy now. All right, anything else?
No.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Thanks, Ryan.
Steve on the list?
What's that?
Is Steve on the list?